It really boils down to this word, uncancelable. My kind of evolution of understanding about why Ethereum-based training were kind of inherently flawed for the long term, and that my understanding of that the Bitcoin resilience and the security model and the adoption and stuff was going to just continue to be stronger. I really wanted this on the Bitcoin side, and I think it makes a lot of sense.
This podcast episode is an event recording. If you're listening to the audio version, you might be missing some context from the speaker's visuals. You can find the video version at atlbitlab.com. That's atlbitlab.com. There might also be audience questions or other background chatter that's not audible. Look, event recordings are never perfect, but we're sharing it here because we think you're going to find something valuable. Let's talk a little bit about our sponsors first, and then we'll get on to the show. This episode is sponsored by ATL BitLab. ATL BitLab is Atlanta's Freedom Tech hackerspace. We have co-working desks, conference rooms, event space, maker tools, and tons of coffee. There's a very active community here in the lab. Every Wednesday night is Bitcoin night here in Atlanta. We also have meetups for cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, decentralized identity, product design, and more. We offer day passes and nomad passes for people who need to use the lab only occasionally, as well as memberships for people who plan to use the lab more regularly, such as myself. One of the best things about having a BitLab membership isn't the amenities, it's the people. Surrounding yourself with a community helps you learn faster and helps you build better. Your creativity becomes amplified when you work in this space. That's what I think, at least. If you're interested in becoming a member or supporting the space, please visit us at atlbitlab.com. That's atlbitlab.com. All right, on to our show.
So welcome everyone to BitDevs Wednesday night. Tonight we're talking about Spaces protocol. I'm Andrew. We'll talk a little bit about me a little bit in a second. I wanted to kick this off with a little video that I just literally saw this morning, and I thought it really tied into this. So,
what makes Bitcoin special, makes things like Nostr special, is they're permissionless. You don't need anyone's permission to build what you want to see, and that's just incredible. Like to be able to work on a money transmission protocol that's entirely open, that has no one leader, that has all this attention, that has converted the likes of BlackRock or these major institutions that were these things that we railed against in the past. And now they have to turn their attention to it. And yet you still don't need their permission to build on it, or to change it, or to better it. Where else can you find it? Like at that scale? Nowhere. And in only 16 years. So imagine the next 16 years and how you can contribute to it. Again, only asking yourself permission. But it's just an incredible thing to be a part of, and it reminds me so much of the earlier net, where you, again, the default ones, you didn't need permission to do anything. We see more and more of that going away. Bitcoin and Nostr and hopefully something in intelligence will be the antidote to that. It brings back to like what made the internet special in the first place, what made it magic. So permissionless, that's the one.
A great classic thought.
So that was the end of the clip. I thought it kind of summed up. He didn't mention anything about names, of course, in there, but in naming systems. But I thought, man, it kind of like summarized kind of the sentiment that's behind this. So I thought it was a great thing to start with. And we're talking about Spaces protocol. What is Spaces? It is a scalable, permissionless Bitcoin identity. So identity, I think, sells it a little bit short, but we'll go with that. This is right from the website. We're going to look at the website largely tonight. I don't have a huge number of slides to show. I think a lot of it's just going to be kind of poking around the website and some of the resources and talking about how this works, get you a sense. I'll start off by saying, if you got questions, just shout out, let's just talk. I mean, it's pretty unstructured, my thoughts about how I'm going to present tonight. And if you got thoughts and you've got questions, then let's just kind of delve into it and like clear up as best as I can. I will be first to say that I don't know everything. especially the zero knowledge proof stuff is kind of still a bit mystic to me, but we'll touch on it and I'll answer everything I can. I have had dialogue with the project founder. I actually talked to him this morning, as well as I've talked to him a few times in the past. And I have a sense of his history and kind of the thoughts around coming to it where we are today. So I can't speak for him completely, but I can kind of give a sense of it. So Spaces empowers users with sovereign Bitcoin identity, anchored securely on the Bitcoin blockchain, key thing. Imagine a social handle that's truly yours, censor resistant, and accessible across various protocols like Nostr, naming of wallets, peer-to-peer applications, and beyond. All right, sounds pretty salesy, but who is here for the Nostr meetup? So you got about a half dozen here. So I think this really kind of crosses over into the Nostr space a bit. We'll talk about where that kind of is. So who am I? I'm Andrew, as I mentioned, Andrew Lunde. I've been developing since I was in high school. I guess you could say that. So as you can notice, probably that's quite a few years. And I've been focusing, kind of pivoting, as we like to say, pivoting from enterprise kind of traditional stuff more recently to Bitcoin and Lightning sort of things. This kind of falls into that. Primarily, my grounding is a sound money advocate, and I'm into, these days, all things decentralized, money, media, naming, and ID. The Nostr meeting that we were doing on Mondays was a decentralized ID meeting, and we felt that the scope of that was a bit limiting. We weren't really drawing the huge mega crowds that we were hoping to. We swept it out for the Nostr, so hopefully that's going to bring in the big numbers here. So a couple articles. I found out about this project, it was last year around September, early September. And I went back to my notes and I was trying to figure out when I first kind of seen it. There was, I think, a Bitcoin Magazine article that just mentioned this guy that's the founder. His name's Mike Carson, that they were doing something with domain naming on Bitcoin. And I went back around this time frame, I found this article, and it talks about decentralized naming could be bring the next billion users. Now, it mentions Mike here, and if you read this article, which I recommend, I got this linked in the notes, and I can give anyone this deck if they want in the future. But it talks about his history. He ran a domain registry for a number of years. He was involved with all the early kind of OGs of the domain name system, like VeriSign and ICANN and all that stuff. So he's pretty steeped in this whole issue and how DNS works and how it gets abused through squatting and other things. But I picked out this quote of this article: Bitcoin is the most secure and decentralized proof of work blockchain by far. So it makes complete sense that decentralized naming should be anchored in the Bitcoin block space. And I know we can contend on this. There's a lot of purists that say, Bitcoin, it's for money only. Get that crap out of here. We saw what happened with ordinals. We saw what happened, with inscriptions. It's like not the purest view of money or of the usage for the Bitcoin blockchain. And I think my stance is more along the lines of hey, if you're willing to store something there and you're willing to pay to get it stored there, then it's an open market. I don't want to see a huge bloat. This protocol doesn't bloat the blockchain. It's very small footprint, but I think it leverages a lot of the attributes of the blockchain and is by and large the best place for stuff even like this. So, any questions? No? All righty. Another article that came out, and here's this is the founding of the project, Mike Carson, in August last year. This was coming up on the TabConf, and actually one of their core developers made it to TabConf last year, and I was able to chat with him for a couple hours one afternoon. So I know these folks are real, and this is taking a little bit similar sort of spin. We know this kind of tagline: not your keys, not your coins, not your keys, not your name, and why naming is the next killer app was another good article. Got it linked here. Some of this I thought really rang true to the discussion as well. the internet once envisioned as democratic force, free expression, global communication, now faces threats from government censorship, corporate influence, technical vulnerabilities. Decentralized mining built on a robust and secure foundation of Bitcoin offers a future where individuals and businesses can have greater control over their identities, ideas, and information. By leveraging the immutability, transparency, and censor-resistant nature of Bitcoin, decentralized naming systems can have a more resilient and democratic alternative for managing their identities. With Bitcoin as the backbone, we can ensure that decentralized naming is not only inevitable, but also truly successful in creating an open, global, open, and free internet, one where everyone can have an equal voice in shaping the global conversation without fear of censorship and control. And an internet that is cypherpunk. So cypherpunk is a bit of a, I guess a bit of a stretch there, but the folks that kind of are behind this really are truly wanting to do this in the right way. And there is a history of projects that have led up to this. I know anyone familiar with Ethernet naming service? Ethereum, yeah, Ethereum naming service. Sorry, thanks, Rich. There was something called Namecoin. There was something called Handshake or Handbrake. That was like a whole other chain that had this at its core. There's been several attempts at doing something like this in the past, and nothing has really kind of caught hold yet. I think, and we're going to go through some of the methodology of it here. I think this project really has some gravity to it. I think if done right, if it's continued in the way that it's kind of going, it could catch on, or it could not. Again, it's not critical. Go ahead.
Other attempts they can catch on?
Yeah, so the question is, do I have a sense for why these other attempts didn't catch on? Speaking with Mike earlier today, I was asking him the same question. And he said really each project, each attempt kind of failed in some way. Sometimes it was the fact that, there was insider issuance where the people that were creating it grabbed a bunch of good names, and kind of tried to box people out. There was issue of, I think, charging too much for the names, and it became kind of every lost interest. I can't really go, that first article that was referenced gets into quite a bit of the background of why some of these projects kind of didn't take off. And this one, we'll see. We're not sure. Time will tell how this kind of plays out. But I think it's got some really good legs to it. Question?
Set of problems trying to solve. What's the weakness of the DNS?
Good question. So the question, just to repeat it, is what problem is this solving? What is the weakness? So and I kind of grapple with this myself. And I was talking with Mike, the founder, earlier today, and say, are we solving a problem that doesn't exist? It's in a way, DNS, and that's what this is meant to solve, is replace DNS as a name to other information. You can say name to IP in the kind of purest DNS sense, but it's name to where's your email exchanger, or there's a name to some text, or there's a name to an identity or a wallet address, whatever it is, something human readable to something that's more difficult to, keep track of. And in a way, the answer is, for most people, especially people in the United States, this may never be a problem. People are like, well, DNS works, and it does. It's heavily distributed, but it's not decentralized. People think of DNS and they hear about it and they're like, oh, it's decentralized. No, it's not. There's the .com, .org, .net, .mil, all the top level domains are hosted by a set of root servers that, if there's an entity that takes control of those root servers, or if there's a DDoS attack on those servers, or if something about the people that control those servers changes, then they could affect whether or not your website can be reached by anyone else. So in a lot of ways, it's well, what does Nostr, what does it fix? That's, we've got X, we've got truth, we got, Rumble, we've got these other blue sky things. I mean, there's all this social media. Why do you need Nostr? Well, because everything else is centralized. You can turn off that. And we talked about this in the Nostr meeting. It's like there was a bunch of YouTubers that got kicked off of YouTube for their, right-wing political opinion. And they're like, well, wait a second, freedom of speech. And like, no, it's like the law says, it's like if we own the platform, we can kick you off. And go build your own platform. There's nobody stopping you. Well, they did. There was a platform called Parler that emerged out of the aftermath of that big exodus. And a lot of those conservative voices went and rebuilt their following. And if you imagine like you're a YouTube influencer, that's a lot of work to get a following and get a reputation built just to have it all yanked. So a lot of people went to Parler, but then somebody didn't like that on Parler. And what did they do? Did they shut down Parler? No, they went and yanked Parler's account through Amazon. So they put political influence on Amazon to shut them down. And a lot of the people then migrated to things like Rumble and BitChute and Odyssey and these others. But I'm like, hello, it's like, these are still different yet still centralized systems, right? So it's like, yes, maybe now the policy is to encourage free speech. We can see what happened with Twitter and X, and Elon bought X, and he's like, we're going to make it free speech. There are still people that get censored on X. So it's like, how many times we have to learn the lesson that if you're relying on anything that's centralized, then that's a vulnerability. It may not be attacked, but it may be attacked. I saw an article in Malaysia. The government didn't like some websites, and they forced because it was a Malaysian top-level domain, and then there's root servers in Malaysia that control that distribution or the delegation of those things, that they went in and turned it off. So they turned off whole websites in Malaysia at the DNS level from a government order. There was also a case, the CAT top-level domain, CAT, which is Catalonia, that region in Spain, right? There was a huge set of people putting up websites that were like railing against the government, mandate, and they literally marched in to the ISPs that were hosting those top-level servers, demanded them to be shut up, and jailed the people and turned off the whole .cat system for a while. So while those incidents didn't affect us here in the US, it has happened. And the point is, it could continue to happen. Will it not? Maybe this regime is pretty friendly. Maybe the next regime isn't so friendly. Who knows? It's more important to get control of these things.
All certificates that you develop or expire within 93 days.
Yeah.
Or secure shell days. Over the DGP days, but really the expire within 93 days are all centralized.
Right. So just to repeat for the recording, Scott's saying it's like all internet activity that's SSH or HTTPS is secured through certificates that are issued through authorities that are controlled, that can take and yank those away from you. So, just because your communication between your client and your server is encrypted, that doesn't mean that can be the same way. And yes, you can create your own certificate authority, but in terms of being able for people to widely use it, it's very restricted. So you're back to the same situation where if there's any way to limit the amount of central authority that your livelihood depends on, then I think taking efforts to figure out what ways to do that is definitely desirable. Lunde.
Like China, they have a limit on what their people can actually see and access, but they really use Nostr and be able to say their point of view across the world.
So, right, the question was, China has a lot of constraints around how their population can use the internet. And does Nostr and or things like this help them? Potentially it does, but also understand too that China's got a tight control of the IP layer of the routing of their, what their population is typically using. When you look at, how you're all connected, like AT&T, Comcast, blah, blah, blah. You're all going through really a handful of internet providers. And that's another area of concern, of control. I mean, what happens if, your ISP decides they don't like you, and they turn you off for political reasons? Like, what's your alternative? It's just like the same thing as when if you got a bank account and the bank doesn't like what kind of business you're in, if I'm a, small arms dealer or whatever, then they can yank it and have. And so in the same way, even though it's maybe not prevalent, these controls do exist. So taking efforts. So Gina.
Just to quickly, I believe when Nostr first became popular, a bunch of Chinese groups actually did join. But they don't use the same servers. So you don't easily see what they're doing.
Right.
They still use
So Gina's point here was that when Nostr first emerged, China was users in China were using it pretty extensively, but they typically used a set of relays that they themselves were using in Chinese language. So part of Nostr is, your experience is dictated by the particular set of relays that you connect to. And if they're all doing Chinese stuff, then obviously that's going to appeal to that audience. So it is distributed more so than most systems. The Nostr side of things is more about on the premise of like, if any particular relay doesn't like what you're saying or doing and tries to squelch your voice, fine, they can stop. You've got others that will continue sending your messages around. But it really boils down to this word, uncancelable. When I first started thinking about this problem and also thinking about how people were approaching it, I got very interested in the unstoppable domains on the Ethereum blockchain. If you look at that, you can go buy a name of a certain number of quasi domains that live in the Ethereum blockchain world, and then you can use that in combination with IPFS, which stands for Interplanetary File System, which is kind of a very distributed kind of way to store content. And if you do that and put the right browser plugin in your browser, then you can actually set it up to where you can get to a web page or website, and it doesn't touch DNS and all. So it's solving the same problem, but on the Ethereum ecosystem, which I really liked, except for I didn't like it was on the Ethereum ecosystem. There was another Ethereum derivative chain that I was very interested in called Theta. And at one point I was like, man, somebody needs to take all this unstoppable domain stuff and then implement it on the Ethereum chain or the Theta chain so we could take advantage of all this stuff too. But by that point, my kind of evolution of understanding about why Ethereum-based chains were kind of inherently flawed for the long term, and that my understanding of that the Bitcoin resilience and the security model and the adoption and stuff was going to just continue to be stronger. I really wanted this on the Bitcoin side, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Question?
Is IPFS?
Yeah, IPFS.
Is that still, is it still around? I know they had a file and thing to try to incentivize people to store data. I didn't know how successful that had been.
Yeah, the question is IPFS, Interplanetary File System, still around? It is. It's, I guess, how much adoption and usage is still kind of up in the air, whether it really will continue. It seems like it's got some persistence. It's got some really interesting things. And when you pay to store a file, it's a one-time fee, and the promise is that file is stored forever. And you're like, well, how is that possible? How is it possible that I can pay one single fee at one point in time and have a file stored forever? And the way they talk about it, if you dig into their docs and stuff, is they're banking on the cost of storage and network costs as Moore's law continues up with things getting cheaper and cheaper. Like the fact that I can get a 2 terabyte SSD for $200 is pretty amazing. Whereas my first hard drive was I don't know, it was 20 meg or something. It was pretty small. It's like the fact that they can charge something, and then based on the fact that they presume the cost of storage is going to continue going down into the future, that they can, that's the guarantee that they've made. So it's pretty compelling to think you can pay for something now that your grandchildren, can see or use. I mean, so much of the NFT world, I mean, you're talking about an NFT, it's like a picture of a bored ape or whatever, right? It's like the NFT is like on the chain, what the information about it, but that picture of that ape lives on a server somewhere. It lives on a web server somewhere. So the day that person gets hit by a truck or it goes out of business, that service, then the picture of that ape goes away. And it's like, well, I spent money on this thing and I can't even get to the picture anymore. That sucks, And I know in the whole craze around runes and inscriptions and all that stuff was putting huge amounts of data, which is effectively a lot of the resources for those NFTs on the blockchain itself. So any other questions? No? All righty. So for the rest of for the presentation, for the most part, I'm going to just look at their website and resources and talk about it. So let's just start clicking. So before I go to this one, let me go to, and let me make it a bit bigger. Can we see it? Yep. All right. So this is the main page. Again, it's a project, it's a protocol, it's not a particular product itself. Like Nostr is a protocol, and there's lots of clients, there's lots of relays, there's things written in any language, and there's a lot of people kind of putting their own spin on things. This is set up in a similar way. If we go and look at the docs, let's do that first. I'm going to kind of walk through. The names themselves kind of look like this. So you just decided, hey, they're kind of making this up. This is what a sovereign space's name should look like. It's something to the left of the @ symbol and something to the right. So right now, and this was launched on mainnet, I believe it was in November of last year. So it hasn't been really live that long. I was trying it on testnet 4 prior to that to do some testing, see how it worked. But it really hasn't been around that long. But this was kind of the way they decided. We're going to use the @ symbol to kind of denote a space's top level name. And then to the right is the name, no dot, just the name. That's it. To the left is what they call, and we're looking here in this example, Alice, is what they call a subspace. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But the @Bitcoin in this example, there's an auction process for declaring who owns and controls what top level names. And we'll go through that in a second, but this is how it's laid out. And then once this exists, then it can map to an identity. It could be a Nostr identity or other identities. So in this case, it maps to this particular npub. But it can also, through another system, simulate DNS lookups, so DNS zone information. So think of things like A records, CNAME records, text records, those sorts of things can be also associated with a particular top level name on its own, or what this is like a subspace names.
Like the auction process as legitimate.
So it is. Yeah, it's part of it, and I think they've put a lot of thought into this. So I'm gonna talk about that in a second. So just a few things here, and let me see if I can make this bigger. So there we go. So what makes Space special? They're anchored in BitChain. We talked about that. And primary spaces are what they call community identifiers. And because of the issuance, i.e. in the rate at which these names can be created, and we'll talk about that, there's an absolute limit of 3,600 per year it can be created. And they're acquired through permissionless auctions that actually occur on the Bitcoin blockchain. And the primary space, they call it a community, but basically then the number of things to the left of the @ symbol can be pretty much unlimited, known as subspaces. And this is something that it took me a little bit to understand, because we really, our thoughts kind of go back to DNS and how it works, in that in DNS, everything to the left of the dot, like you get a .com name, so you got that first, that second level DNS name. And if you say there's something to the left with another, you can say, well, that's a subdomain, and I can delegate that to someone else. And you can say to that one, you say, well, put another dot there, and there's another subdomain. So in a DNS system, there's this hierarchy of delegation that's inherent in how DNS works. In this system, even though it looks like there's kind of a main level at Bitcoin, and then Bob, Alice to the left, that maybe there's 2 levels. Actually, once a name has been created, a subspace in their terminology, it participates in a very flat namespace. All this stuff lives at the same level. Steve, question?
Quick comment on just something about DNS is very powerful, because you had subdomains on subdomains on subdomains.
Yeah.
In my opinion, DNS is also just as flat, because when you actually look at how it is entered into like a zone file, like if you have andrew.users.atl.bitlab.com, andrew.users is just one subdomain with a period in the middle. Like it doesn't even like at the there's no like sense of like, oh, there's like some other zone file that it's being delegated to. It's just a string with a period in the middle. So like the whole like concept of like subdomains of subdomains is just like the way we think about it with like our people brains, but it's really just a string of a period.
So hopefully that was caught, but just to recap it quickly, Stephen's saying the subdomains are just really a dot in the name. It can be, or it can represent further delegation. It depends on how you set up your zones and delegation. You can say that's where the start of authority record dictates, okay, now I'm taking over this part of the name and everything to the left of it. So
I see you do that with like a web host to like kind of says that's like a different protocol there, but I digress. That's
yeah. No, it's a good point, and it is because there's a lot of overlap, and because the intention and the kind of function of it is very much attempting to replace DNS, then the comparison always comes in. How does this work? How is it compared to DNS? And so those are always the questions that are popping up. Go ahead.
Say I win an auction and I get a particular space. Do I control who gets to make a subspace in my space?
You do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That to me seems like a problem, because that seems like we get back to the same problem with DNS, where it's not permissionless anymore. I have to ask the permission of the person who has the space to get a subspace.
And they have property rights.
Yeah. So
I think that's where the auctions come in.
this is part of this, and we're going to touch on that if you hold on to that question a little bit, but to kind of partially answer it, and because I wanted to kind of impress this point of it, is that once a subspace, which is like the Alice at Bitcoin, once the Alice part has been created, then it lives in initially kind of, and I'm not completely exactly sure how all of this works because it's yet to be rolled out in terms of functionality, but it exists in like a Merkle tree representation of that part of the space, and can exist in that way without going back on chain for that. However, like you say, oh, if I own the top level and I then I can control it. But once it's been created, so in that case, in the case of this one, Alice at Bitcoin, right? Once that's created, then there's a process where you can take that identifier and take it on chain for a fee. I mean, it's because it's a transaction. And once it's taken on chain, then that severs any relationship with the person that owned the @Bitcoin and their ability to control that any further. Now it stands completely on its own and is just as valid as anything else in the system. So it's a little bit of a little mind bend of how that works. And we haven't really seen the fullest implementation of all that yet, but that's the theory behind it. So if you say, oh, I want an @Bitcoin address, I'm going to pay whoever the guy that's running @Bitcoin is, and I want it to be, me @Bitcoin. As soon as that's created and it's delegated to you, then you can say, well, I don't want to worry about this person like managing this for me anymore. I'm going to take it on chain. And from that point, it's like you completely control it. The person that runs @Bitcoin could get hit by a truck and their estate can totally not know what to do with it and whatever, and it's gone, but you'll still have a valid identifier. Okay? Let me just kind of look through this a little more. So anything else to say? Go ahead.
Why do we need the first level of management? I might not be talking about that, but why do you even need that administrator for @Bitcoin then to start with? Like, what role are they serving? Like, obviously you can't have duplicates, you can't have identical duplicates, but can't you just build that into code? Like, what is that initial winner of the auction doing? Like, what role are they really serving?
So the question is, why does someone need to own that top level name in order to facilitate the functioning of this naming system? I think the best answer is that becomes property that has value, and by virtue of your ownership and control of it, you exert a certain amount of there's value in the property name. Like, would you say that google.com as a name is valuable?
So like why does anyone need to be a gatekeeper on the .com side of it? Maybe I'm misunderstanding. I agree that once you have google.com, that should be something that you can. But why does anyone need to have the .com side of it?
Well, this was designed to be like a permissionless system. There is no owner. There is no entity that controls anything. There's just a process that you follow. And then if you come out of the end of it with being the winner of the Bitcoin, then that becomes your responsibility.
And to give a scenario, so like as far as this question of like why do I need this top level? Let's say if we had it like in pubs where you just had like in this protocol, I've stated that this info gets to point to some IP address. Well, at that point, you didn't need to have this top layer. You get the same effect. You could still even make that permissionless.
All right.
I know it's the same answer.
All right.
Yeah.
Just to answer, kind of quasi answer your question before Alex jumps in. There is another project that does something almost exactly what you're describing. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, okay, so anytime that you're dealing with a protocol that involves ownership, you have to solve the problem with what if two people say that they own the same thing. You have to figure out which person's correct. So how do you do that? Well, you can build something like Bitcoin, and you can have like a massive ledger to figure out who's correct. Like that's the source of truth. But if you're not using a massive shared database, basically, you have to figure out some other way to figure out who owns what. So if two people claim Bitcoin dot whatever, like Bitcoin is claimed by Bitcoin. So to distinguish who owns Bitcoin, you look at the Bitcoin blockchain and to see which transaction was first, basically. Does that make sense? Like how that plays.
That doesn't quite answer my question.
Well,
Because
we didn't have permissionless blockchains in the late 80s when DNS was invented. And so because we didn't have these permissionless blockchains like Bitcoin, we had to say, okay, well, we're going to trust a third party. And that third party is going to be the Internet Corporation for assigned names and numbers. And they're going to delegate authority to domain registrars. And the domain registrars are going to tell you
Natasha owns this domain name, and Steven owns this domain name. So that's kind of at a technical level why you either, you either need some kind of trustless public data source, or you need a trusted third party.
I find that's, to me, that's still not answer, because I feel like you can still have it be trustless without it being this hierarchical level of having the top layer. Because even what you're saying, like if we have the option and store the data on the blockchain to say, hey, this random string of numbers that's going to be your identity points to this IP address, and you can always update that because you basically bought the right to do so. It seems like you still don't need this hierarchy.
Is the hierarchy is a feature that you can do state changes without requiring a Bitcoin transaction. So like you can create more domains off of one way cheaper. Like so
Yeah.
you're saying it does
It's a scaling F. Yeah.
it's really expensive to use this like fair resource.
That makes
All right.
Can you move forward? And I wonder if you get to the auctions, I don't mean like on the page, I'm on the page, but I'm wondering if as you get to the auctions
Yeah.
section, if some of Antoine's questions might make sense.
Okay, yeah. No.
Presuming your questions have been answered already.
Right. So just before we move on, because I'm not sure, it'd be nice to kind of keep as much of this discussion like in the recording as possible. Alex was making a point, is that in a system like this, you need a way to definitively say, well, who owns what? If there's two people that contend for owning the same name, say in this case at Bitcoin, how do you know who has the real name or who's the legitimate owner? And Stephen was kind of following on with that. It's like back when the internet was created, we didn't have blockchain as a mechanism for storing things that could be completely trustless. We had to rely on other things. We chose, in this case, to rely on an entity called ICANN, which would then delegate responsibility to registrars, which were businesses like VeriSign, GoDaddy, name any of them, right? Two Cows, if I'm naming myself, aging. Anyway, and then eventually countries got their own delegation so that you could get, the ones that were country, and then that is even further proliferated. But you got to have one or the other. You got to have either an authority that says who owns what that you can go to and ask the question, or you have to have a system of record that you can query and say, okay, who is indeed the proper owner of this property, the name. Good. Let me just kind of look quick here. Spaces protocol is designed with the ZK-like clients in mind, making the identities verifiable and resource-constrained device. So this gets to kind of what Alex was touching on. Is like, in order to make it scalable without going on chain or having to query the chain all the time, everything to the left of the @ sign can be managed by 0K proofing sort of systems. Once allocated, permissionless, secure as bridges, no slashing, no any kind of optimistic security. And Trump, no need to trust. Again, this is about the uncancelability. Go ahead.
Okay, so and then they die. Does that mean no more at Bitcoins can get created from that point forward, right? Is that what we're saying? Yep.
Yeah.
Unless they hand it off.
Yeah, they would have to delegate it if they had. I mean, you would probably, if you own at Bitcoin and somebody does, because the auctions have already started and it's been registered, and you don't have good estate planning, succession planning, then it mirrors a lot of the same dilemmas that a lot of owning and controlling a lot of Bitcoin does. It's like, especially when you want to get into estate planning and stuff. The Fabric DHT is, I'm going to skip that. I don't know why it's second in line. Effectively, just quickly, I'll touch on it. It's a distributed hash table set of nodes, not dislike how BitTorrents work, that allow the storage of records, so metadata about a name, to exist and be easily looked up and have a distributed lookup without going on chain and without relying on any particular node. So if you look at how BitTorrent works, dices everything up, it spreads it around all these different servers. It's got this algorithm for how you figure out where stuff is and how to collect it back when you need to like get that download of that movie you're not supposed to be getting, etc. It uses a separate but similar methodology. But and I could talk more about it later. But the more interesting thing is like, how do we get here, right? So the auctions section. So the auctions work like this. Well, before you can participate and kind of take actions, you need to install the software. So the software involves two things: a command line interface tool and a process that needs access, an RPC interface access to a Bitcoin node. So we don't need anything Lightning, just Bitcoin node, right? But you need to have one available that you can have be able to query. And why is that? Well, it's because there's a daemon process that when you run it, it creates its own RPC sort of interface so that you can ask questions to it. And then it crawls the Bitcoin blockchain from a certain height where this protocol was first launched. And then it crawls through it and it builds up a view of all the bidding and registering activity that's occurred since inception on the Bitcoin main blockchain till today. And because it does that, then it has a complete picture of all the name activity and bidding activity that's occurred. So if you run that, then once it's done synchronizing, then you use the command line tool to create a wallet, which is effectively a Taproot-based wallet, because we're talking inscriptions here. And you could then fund that wallet with some Bitcoin. And once that's available, then you can then interact with the command line to issue commands. If you want a name that no one has decided to even start bidding on, you can say open. There's a command that says open this name, and you give it an initial Bitcoin bid in sats. And it's recommended you use about 1,000 sats. So what's 1,000 sats? $1. So if you're interested to start, you say start with $1. And then what happens? So you get into this cycle here where you introduce a name and it goes into this pre-auction pool. So even though it's in the system, you can't actively bid on it yet. Every day, 10 of the highest valued bidded names that's in this pool get released into the active auction phase. Okay. So you can't just like start the system up and then like use some big long list of highly desirable names, Coca-Cola, BMW, MicroStrategy, US government, whatever. Think of all the names that you think, all these things are going to be highly desired and I'll get rich by reselling them. And there is an aftermarket. So you couldn't do that. It's designed to kind of throttle the releasing of kind of intended names into an active auction process. So the top 10 every day get released into the next phase. So when it's in the second auction phase, then there's a 10-day period where active auctioning can happen or active bidding can happen. So we can go, and we'll look at the Explorer here in a second, but let me just explain it first so we can kind of understand what we're looking at. So during that 10 days, everybody can see that a particular name is actively being auctioned. So if you're the highest bidder, good for you. Hopefully nobody outbids you. But if somebody else sees the name that you're kind of interested in and they create a higher bid, their transaction refunds your bid to you, and that becomes the highest bid. So every time you bid, the amount that you're bidding is actually not spent it's spent initially, but if you get outbid, you don't lose it, it gets returned to you. Short, of course, the transaction fees for the Bitcoin blockchain. This can go on and on during the whole 10-day period. Somebody likes that name, they outbid you, you're like, well, hell, I want that name. So you bid a little higher, they outbid you bid, it could be other people, who knows. This continues for 10 days. And at the end of the 10th day, it has to be the highest bid has to be unchallenged for a solid day before it goes into the next phase. So on the 10th day, so there's been a lot of opportunity for people to see what's going on, to express their interest by bidding on it, right? And if you are the highest bidder after 10 days worth of bidding and no one else is willing to bid higher than you, then that after that 10th day, it goes into the claim mode, at which point, so you might ask, like, well, what happens on the 10th day if somebody outbids me? From the 10th day on, anytime you're outbid, not only does that bid become the highest bid, it also extends the deadline for another day. So it's not like on eBay where you used to go and sit there and wait for the auction to expire. Like, I'm going to like jump in and snipe this thing at the last second. And then you're sitting there like waiting and like 12:30 at night trying to like get that eBay thing. And you're like, oh, I'm going to get that last bid. I'm going to get it. And then somebody like overbids you. It's like, oh, auction closed. It's like, you can't do that. Every higher bid in the last day always extends the bidding time frame deadline another day. So you can keep doing this. You can keep going back and forth, you and somebody else that really wants this name, bidding it up. But every time somebody bids it up, it gives the other person, or I should say any other interested party, an opportunity to come in and bid higher. So yeah, it could be indefinite. Go ahead. Question?
Like basically then all of the names they don't want to ever get off, and like why can't you just do this yourself over and over again? You have to plug your Bitcoin to do it. But these transactions aren't getting settled, are they?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're burning Bitcoin in every bid.
Yes.
But you bid.
Yes. Well, okay. No. I'm sorry. I misspoke. You said, are you burning Bitcoin in every bid? And that's no. You're spending Bitcoin in every bid. And you're spending the transaction fee to place the bid. So the bid is held in the UTXO set that the protocol knows about. Okay. And I'll get to the other registration point, and that answers your question, I think. Where is the money going? It's in your wallet. It's basically in the wallet that you're using to place the bidding.
I think it means when you win.
When you win?
What goes on when I place a bid? Like I create a PSDP, and then I have some like an input that has like a higher amount of Bitcoin.
Right. Part of the transaction also at the same time you're bidding the higher bid, it's also another output is refunding the person you overbid in the same transaction. Yes. Right. One of the outputs. So when you say something's at 6,000 sats, and then you say, so I bid 6,000 sats, you bid 7,000 sats. Okay. So 7,000 sats comes out of your wallet, right? But the transaction is composed such that when that transaction goes on chain, it pays me the 6,000 back, and then now you're deemed the highest bidder. That's not it functions like, it kind of functions like a mixer. So if you want to use it as a mixer functionality, you could. All right.
Say 6,000 sets, you won.
Yeah.
So your money goes in.
All right. So you did miss that because I hadn't gotten to that yet. All right. So let's just say for the sake of argument that Alex he bid 7,000. I'm like, man, that's too much for me. I don't want to bid anymore. And it sits there for a day. No one else outbids Alex. So from that time he put that highest bid in to exactly one day later, if no one else has outbid and further extended the deadline, then it moves into this next state, which is the claim state. Now, at that point, it's up to Alex to then do another command to actually finalize, put it in the name in a registered state, and then effectively burn the highest bid to, I think, a of the transaction. It doesn't go to some from what I understand, this is what I've been told. I haven't looked into the code to like verify it myself, but the code is open source, so you could. But it gets effectively sent to the output that makes it no longer spendable. Is it a nonce output? What, there's a I can't remember what it's called. What is it? Yes, it sends it to op return, so it doesn't accumulate in some mystical like person's. No, well, miners always get the fees, but nobody gets the winning bids. No, so effectively, winning bids in this naming system makes everybody else's Bitcoin more valuable because they are being burned.
But it's the only amount that goes to the operator is the difference between the previous bid and the winning bid, because most of the bid went to the previous bidder.
Well, most of the bid, like when you're outbidding someone, most of the bid gets returned to the previous bidder, right? But when you register it, it's a different transaction. In this case, then the full amount of the highest bid goes to the op return, so it can't be spent anymore. And then the data of that you're the owner of this name is inscribed on that inscription. Question. Okay.
So we burn this record of ownership, like yes, it's in the blockchain record, but if no one had, like if we don't have enough archival nodes that keeps that data, how will you know? And then how are we incentivizing people to keep that data around if we're effectively burning money every time we want to bid?
It's on the Bitcoin blockchain. It's there. It's never going away.
Domain name and use that as the permanent address.
I think what it's concerned is it's an op returns are prunable. And so like if in a hypothetical scenario where a bunch of those like
Every known on the planet became pruned. I guess that would be a problem. But well, at least pruned from the point of when this was first launched, the block height at which it was launched. So yeah, but wouldn't there be a lot of other problems too if that happened? Like there'd be major problems. Like that you're basically wiped out the record of the blockchain in the old history.
The thing is, it's like all you need is one holder to exist.
Yeah.
So long as we have one running, then everybody's data is fine.
Okay.
That's a good question because I mean this is, you know, not it's kind of hard to understand.
Supposing Spaces took off, supposing you're a business that had an identity on Spaces, that would incentivize your business to run a full node, to make sure you have this returns.
Okay.
If you own a space, you're incentivized to run a full node. That's what it's made.
Okay, that makes sense actually. Yeah.
So once Alex is like is 7,000 sats are burned forever, but he's got the space. He won the auction. He's registered it. Is now part of the system. He can, like, people can send him Bitcoin to the at Alex name or whatever. Is that it? Gina, go ahead. It's this is all written on the Bitcoin in the outputs of the transaction. So it's well, and it's the key that signs that transaction is his key. So he from his wallet. So I mean, if he gives his private key to someone else, then yeah, he's given away that property to someone else. Now there is a transfer, an actual like overt transfer mechanism that's possible where you don't give up your key in order to transfer the ownership of a name to another entity. But that's kind of a secondary like action. The next thing to think about is that, okay, so let's just say Alex got Coca-Cola and then he was the rightful winner and Coca-Cola really wanted it and he wasn't willing to sell and he didn't do anything with it and then he got hit by a truck. It's like, does that name, is it like tied up forever? And the answer is not exactly. If nothing happens in relation to that name for a year after it's been registered, then it can re-enter the available for pre-auction phase again. So this arrow can exist. So what this does is it prevents people from like buying up a bunch of stuff, sitting on it, squatting on it, and not doing anything with it for a long period of time, and it's just like never available for anyone from that point forward. That would say it again? Escheatment.
It's like, if you have a bank,
Right.
you don't use back in like 10 years, the state will execute as cheap and
Right.
take ownership of the funds of that.
Right.
But what counts as doing something? I mean, isn't it very simple to do something?
Yes, it is. Okay, so that's the other part that I hadn't gotten to yet. So the question was, what constitutes doing something? So any transaction involving this henceforth automatically puts a new year expiration date on it. So all you have to do is tickle it once a year, and you'll forever have it. So what is tickle it? I don't know. It's doing something with it. But anyway, it's like, I think at most that means like you would have to pay some minor transaction fee just to kind of keep it alive. Now you might say, well, that fees can go up and the price of Bitcoin can go up, and maybe that means it would get more and more expensive over time to just hold on to these names. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's a trade-off decision. So anyway, that's kind of the life cycle of names at top level names. Question?
That worries me, because that feels like the scenario where you buy your home and then property taxes go up so high that now you can't afford the property taxes, and then you basically have to give up your home. But
So-
doing the virtual.
So what's a transaction fee for like a simple transaction? Like when you're talking right now, it's 3 V bytes per VSATs per byte. Yeah, like 3 to 5 right now. I've seen it as high as a couple hundred. But I think one transaction, maybe it's $10 worth of thing. I mean, I spend like easily $20 a year for every domain that I've never even used to keep it registered. So
Could come up with and put an open PDP certificates on the Bitcoin block. And then if I want to make changes to revoke keys or update keys, I basically do a linked list on blockchain. The linked list would be a future hash address or a future address of which I would have the private keys. And if there's an action on that address, then I know I'm updating the keys.
yeah, I'm not completely clear.
You don't have to pay all the periodic fees other than fee when you have an change.
Right. I can see how that can work. This has an implicit like year-long timer on each action. Steven.
I just want to go and say we've got about 15 minutes left.
Oh, sir.
You do Q&A, that's up to you.
Well-
So if there's a destination you'd like to get to, it might be good to just plow through and we'll see. It's all.
Let's I'll
He wants to take us by the end of the evening, not anyone else.
Yeah, I think the whole auction phase is kind of awkward and new to this idea, so I wanted to give it some time. But there's really not much more to say about the auction process. That's it. So, and all the questions that you gave about the auction are very valid. Again, think about it. The intent is like, let's make a system that's fair, such that people have a real opportunity to like bid on these things and have a real chance to get them. If it's a high value name, if it's Nike, I don't know if Nike's taken or not, and Nike really wants it, then Nike's gonna pay what they feel it's worth, and if somebody else wants it better because they think that the Nike God is like their favorite token or something, from Greek mythology, then maybe they'll outbid the Nike Corporation. It's like, it's really up to the market. It's trying to put a free market spin on this resource of the namespace. So this section talks about where do the auctions go. All proceeds are burned. This means the BTC used for bids is permanently removed from circulation. We mentioned this already. So effectively, by participating in this thing that may or may not, take off, you're effectively making everybody's Bitcoin a little bit more valuable in your own little special way. So thank you, everyone. Yeah, there's no other token. There's no pre-mine. There wasn't any initial swooping up of names from the developers. This is all out in the open. It's all inspectable, auditable on chain. The code is open source. Anyone can participate. There's no permissions necessary. It's on the Bitcoin blockchain, so it's a global namespace. It is now somebody else could do the same thing, but they would have the same startup cost. I mean, it's the same dilemma that everyone has about Bitcoin, right? They're like, well, we'll just copy Bitcoin. It's like, well, yeah, you can copy Bitcoin, sure, but are you going to copy the network effect? Are you going to copy the miner community? Are you going to copy all that? No. So yeah, name resolution. We've talked a little bit. I mentioned a little bit, and this is the thing I've been kind of focusing on lately. There's a couple things. One is you can, because these things are tied to a key, a private key, it's effectively a Taproot wallet with some special functioning to make sure that the transactions get created properly. But from that private key pair, you can derive a Nostr key, a Nostr style key, and you can then use your wallet to sign Nostr events. That's built in. We don't really need anything else for that. But if you want more information around that, then, well, this is a little function. If you know someone else that has one of these namespaces wallets, you can send sats straight to their name. It's a little bonus, but that's probably not all that useful right now. I mean, it's more important that you be able to use it for other interesting things. So upcoming is record. Basically, they're copying the namespace zone files just from a format perspective and using that to then associate other attributes to your name. So this could be like an A record for an IP address or a TXT record for just any random string, effectively an MX record if you wanted to refer to a mail exchanger this way. Again, the value of this, none of this ever hits the DNS system. So if DNS is down, this still works, right? As long as you have an internet. So if the powers that be decided that they wanted to control everybody's ability to use Twitter and they shut down all DNS, yeah, no one can use it. But this would still exist. This would still work, right? And if Nostr used this to address its relays, then even if somebody wiped out DNS completely or like poisoned it so that all the answers were wrong, this would still operate completely independent of it. Some of the things that they're going to talk about, that they're working on: silent payment addresses, Nostr and Onion services, etc. And yeah, these zone files are distributed on a hyper DHT node network. So it's a separate thing that kind of sits off to the side, and we're trying to, encourage people to run these DHT nodes. The name that they use here is called Fabric. It's effectively a hyper DHT with a distributed hash table data setup. It's like I said, the closest thing to it is there's something called mainline DHT, which is what we call the BitTorrent. Sorry, I want to say something else, but anyway, question.
So you run this DHT, you run that in addition to maybe having your Bitcoin node that has a history of the transaction?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. This is a separate thing because they didn't want to put extra data on the Bitcoin blockchain. Like, they want to keep the stuff that's anchored on the Bitcoin blockchain as minimal as possible. And they're really looking out, unlike, runes and these things which really blowed up the blockchain's block space. One of the intentions is to be extremely minimal as well as scalable. So we talked about subspaces. That's not available yet. It's they're working on a kind of a mobile wallet that'll allow you to do all the bidding activity, so you don't have to run the software yourself. But after that, the subspaces is the next thing that they're going to be working on. If you want to dive in deep into the details of that, my recommendation is to look at the white paper, which covers the same stuff, but it goes into a lot more detail of how the subspaces and you work, like how taking them on and off chain works, and how you do this loss of liveliness. That's the year-long sort of event. And it gets into a lot more nitty-gritty details. I'm gonna kind of move along here. Let's look at the Explorer. So if you pull up explorer.spaceprotocol.org, you can get kind of a view of where the bidding activity is. And this top section is just a bit of statistics about what's happened so far. So where we at block-wise, how many spaces exist, events are different, like bids and sort of outbid stuff. So 1.42 BTC burned to date. So far since November, that's about $120,000 worth of Bitcoin. So somebody thinks this is worth something. Somebody's willing to like roll the dice on this. So for the recording, Stephen has a very aghast look on his face right now. Yeah. So yeah, it's using it up. Yeah, 1.4. Yeah, 2. Okay, and what's today's price? I saw coming in here was about 86.
2 hours being bought for $1.
So yeah, so these are the things that are in auction. Let me go first to upcoming auctions. So these are names that have been submitted but aren't in that active auction bidding pool yet. So this is only sorted by the bid value. So they recommend you don't want to have too small. You get into this weird dust config. Like if it's too small a bid, it starts mingling with dust values. So they recommend you use at least 1,000 sats to bid initially, which is $1, right? Well, 80 cents right now, 86 cents, whatever it is right now. So it's not a whole lot just to kick things into action. So these are, you could be James at Bond, if you get that one. It's 1,000 sats. Looks like there's a couple pages. Okay, audio. So these weird, funky things are what they call Puni codes. I guess they're big in Japan. I don't know. They're effectively resolved to these little symbols like emoji kind of things. So proof portfolio. So some of these might be interesting. So these are all kind of waiting in the waiting room. Maybe kind of consider it the mempool of spaces. The current auctions is what's going on now, what's in that 10-day time frame, or if they're at the 10th day and there's a active auction that it may be kicking out, but they're still doing it. So it looks like Prince is in here with purple. Some of these short ones are, somebody's trying to get porn and they've got it up to 6 bids up to 0.0025. So man, you know what they say about how you advance a new technology. You gotta like engage the porn industry. So sushi. So address code, address, that's not too bad. I mean, you can kind of see how that might be used. You need a little vision to kind of see where this might fit. I'm just going to look at the next page. We got some more communicator, candy, color. Yeah, so let's look. Yeah, let's look at bid value sorted. You can sort this by upper or lower. So currently, I guess porn's leading the charts here. And how apropos is that, right? Yeah. Studio, Sushio. Team. Team could be something useful. Bingo. How much is bingo? So, 0.035. Yeah. So any of these, anybody like want to jump in on these? No? Ego? No?
Previous options to see like what the most expensive.
Okay, yeah. I was saving the best. Yeah, I was saving the best for last. Okay, so yeah, past auctions. So let's sort this by bid value. So the highest bid value is Bitcoin, followed by AI, and then one. One? I don't know. S, M, these single letters. X. Okay, you could kind of see X. So yeah, well, maybe he did, or maybe somebody hopes Elon eventually wants it. So yeah, so 0.025. So that is that 2,500 about dollars, roughly at 100,000 sats. ID. I was actually bidding on ID for a while because I thought, yeah, I could see where ID would be pretty useful, especially with decentralized ID and stuff. And I was bidding back and forth. I think we had it extending it for about 5 days beyond the 10 days. And finally, whoever it was like went to like $400 worth. And I'm like, I'm out. It's like, I'm not hanging in for that. I don't want it that bad, which is kind of interesting. You watch this, or if you start getting interested in participating and trying to bid on stuff, you kind of like look at trying to game out the bid dynamics. Like, do I bid it up a little bit and just drag it out? Or do I like come in with a big overbid and just like scare the other people away? Or, I don't know. It's like, it's kind of fun to see what's going on, but let's see, well, these are like all these single letters. Hello went for 0.01. How about that? What's that? .com. It's in here somewhere. Let's see. BTC.bet. DM. Oops. DM. Yeah, you can look at so this is the DM. I just clicked on it. So you can see what the bid action was. So they came in at 1,000 sats, and then they went to 7 right away, and then a little bit higher, and then 8. And I guess that's where it ended. So, but you can search. You can say COM if you want. So COM went to what? Let's see. 0.00121 was the highest bid. You have any other curious? I'll put one that I was bidding on. Oh wait, not strategy. How about strategy? Yeah, you don't want to like spend a bunch of money on something that's misspelling, right? So yeah, I was like, the day that like MicroStrategy announced that they were changing their name, I thought, I wonder if anybody over there's like paying any attention to this. So I went and opened it. Let's see, but I opened it for like 1,000, and then I 10x'd it just to get it into. I said, I don't want it to languish here for who knows how long. Let me get the bidding going. So I 10x'd it to just get things started, and then it rolled out, right? So then it becomes that's part of the active pool. So then it's like 0.002. So what's that? $20? Is that right? Let's just round. And then it went to 40, then 50, then 70, then 80, then 90. And then where did it go? This is a strategy. Oh, up here in the upper left. See? Yeah. So that's $100, right? About. That's no, that's 100. I wouldn't have bid that high. So then it's like 1,200, 1,300, 1,400, no, I mean 150. This is 200, 200, 300, 400. I'm like, I'm not going to go any higher. So whoever got it at $400, so he can sell it to Michael for $4 million. If Michael cares, who knows? Again, this is kind of like we don't know. Anyone are curious about any? So,
Oh, God.
Gov. Gov went for 0.00175. So, but what's that? Alex. So look, Alex, the name is available. Alex could jump in, or if you want to piss off Alex, you could jump in, take off, and then resell. There is I'd have to go find the link to it, but there is a secondary market for those that have won the auctions but are reselling them. And
So what, like Smith or Jones, like common last name?
Jones. Nope. Smith.
He's having Jones. Yeah.
Smith Jones. You said. Nope. So Carson, who was the team lead, and then
Ben Carson, it's Mike and Carson.
Yeah.
Already.
Oh, it looks like somebody snagged my last name.
Really?
Yeah, that sucks. I mean, you think pre who would yeah, whatever. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, let's any other questions here? I know it's a little thin on technical detail, but it is working. All right, just to kind of wrap up. I've been working with the folks to package this up to make it easy to install and use for folks that don't want to deal with, running Docker containers and stuff on their own machine with their own node and all that fun stuff. Obviously, you don't need to do it this way, but if you're inclined and you've got a Start9, so I've got it packaged up for that, and I'm working with them to get to have, when Start9 in the next major upgrade, they're going to go ClearNet, which means that then services running on your Start9 box can be addressable from the outside world. And that will open up the path of putting the fabric node that serves the DNS zones on here as well. So you would just click install it, and suddenly you would be participating in the node system that helps to support the node, to hopefully kind of reinforce that. So that's mine. This is what it looks like when you run it. It's just a little GUI command line interface. So it's not a whole lot to see, but you run this command spaces CLI, or I aliased it to spaces, but I said list spaces, and this is the 8 that I know that I own. Lunde, I already revealed that I own that one, but I own space as well and a few others. But it's one of the things I'm working. So lately I've been working on. I took because it really replaces a host name in a lot of contexts. So what I was trying to do was to hijack a DNS server that's doing some similar name resolution and adding the spaces resolution to it. I've got it kind of mocked up and working so that in a DNS I can use NS lookup and say NS lookup at space, and it works. It gives me an IP address or a text record using the DNS methodology, which everything's built around, right? So, and then when I tried to do that in a browser, it didn't work. Of course, because a browser sees the @ symbol and says, I don't know what this is. It's not a host name, so I'm not even going to try to find it. So what the browser does is it says it must be something that they're searching for. So it then kicks off the default search engine and then passes that name. And so what I ended up doing was I was working on a Chrome search engine proxy server, which is basically just a Node.js server that understands how to resolve these space names. And then if it doesn't find it, then it passes it off to the search engine, and then you get the search results. So if you type @space in your browser window, it actually goes to the space page, which is the IP of my other server. And if it's something else, then it just gives you search results. So it doesn't mess up your searching, but it kind of hijacks that search engine mechanism. And this is something that the team, and we're kind of resolving, figuring out what's the best way. You can make a custom browser that would understand how to deal with this. You could create a custom Nostr client to deal with it like inherently. Is there any other questions? I think we've hit a lot as we've gone.
It doesn't have to be one. Can you put multiple things to the same space in subspace?
Well, you could put multiple kinds of things to the same space.
It's big address one obviously. Right, but then if you had, you could use the same thing and have multiple different kinds of things direct to that, right? Questionable.
Well, like if like you could have like an A record, which is an IP address. You can have multiple. I mean, it's possible to have multiple IP addresses, like for round robin dispatching, etc. You can have multiple text records, you can have MX records, you can have CNAME records, you really don't want to have name server or start of authority records, but most of the other stuff you can. But really, to answer your question, what you want to do is to create subspaces for all their different needs and then assign the various kind of metadata to each one that makes sense. So this is like my my business wallet. This is my personal wallet. And this is my pocket change wallet. And this is each one of those could have a different name. So you can say send some Bitcoin to my coin purse at Alex, and then boom, it would go into that wallet. So any other questions?
At space, right?
At
So
space.
you can have Lunde at space.
I could have Lunde at space. I could have space at Lunde.
You can sell the Nostr,
Yeah.
and then you can also sell to anyone
Gina
else
at space.
their
Yeah.
name.
Sure.
And then if I own Lassiter at space, then all the dots in front of Lassiter would be mine. I could sell the Rich.Lassiter. I could sell the Jimmy.Lassiter, right? I could
No.
no.
You would have to go back. I'm the at space guy. Then if you want all those other things, you would have to come back to me for that. Unlike this, what we're talking about earlier, unlike where DNS is, you can delegate those subdomains, then that would be the case. But in this case, even it's all one flat namespace.
Okay, actually, I think we're kind of over time here. This has been a fascinating presentation. Everyone clearly has a lot of questions. I recommend everybody walk on the Beltline with us to dinner and buy Andrew a beer and ask him whatever you want to do.
Beers.
All right.
Still home.
Right. Very good. Okay. One last personal plug, and you can cut this out of the recording, or not. I'm still looking for work. I'm available and willing to contract. If you need something done, let me know, especially in this space. And yeah, that's it. So thanks.
Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to learn more about anything that we discussed, you can look for links in the show notes. That should be in your podcast player, or you can go to atlbitlab.com/podcast. On a final note, if you found this information useful and you want to help support us, you can always send us a tip in Bitcoin. Your support really helps it so that we can keep bringing you content like this. All right, catch you later.